Hey guys, welcome back to Zero's Album Review, the show where I talk about music I've been listening to recently. What I want to talk about today is another contender for Best Album of the Year. That would be Refused's War Music. If you guys recall from the first episode of this, I talked about The Shape of Punk to Come and what kind of album it was and what it did for punk rock and hardcore at the time. And this album, I dare say, might be better than A Shape of Punk to Come. Now, of course, that is a very iconic album, so it's considered a classic among people who like that kind of music. This was not the first album they've made since then. They also made an album called Freedom, which in 2015, which if I'm going to be honest, I didn't think it was that great. But this is, I think, what I would call the proper follow-up to Shape of Punk to Come. It just took 21 years to actually happen. So, this album, I have been listening to from front to back several times. I've listened to it in remix order on my MP3 player. No matter which way you chop it, this album is just full of bangers, or what I like to call stompers. You know, you get those hardcore songs that really want to make you stomp around. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but this album is probably their most solid one. And I know that's a lot saying because this is only their 5th studio album. They also have a ton of EPs. I'm not 100% familiar with all their work, but this is my favorite so far, and this might be one of the best albums of the year. The album starts off great with tracks like Revolution 1 or REV001, which is a great smashing way to start the album. Violent Reaction, which is like another like punchy track to get things going. Then the third track, which I think is my favorite on the album, is I Want to Watch the World Burn. I wasn't expecting this to be my favorite album, but my favorite song, because I don't know, it's got kind of like a bit of a Thursday feel to it. Not that these guys sound anything close to Thursday, but I kind of got that vibe. If you've heard the song War All the Time by Thursday, it kind of has a similar vibe to that, even though this isn't quite as ambient as that. This is more of a upbeat song. And then you got the title track, Blood Red, which initially I didn't like, and I didn't listen to this album for a while because I didn't like Blood Red that much, but now I've kind of gotten into it. It's actually, if that's the worst song on the album, which it might be, I don't know how I feel about it yet, then you can't go wrong, because it just gets even better from there. Malfire is a great track as well. It reminds me of, it starts off with this thing that goes, "The wolves are at the door." It's like a little like somber thing that starts off before it gets punched up. It reminds me of, if you've ever heard the track You Burn First by Alexisonfire, which was on Crisis. I will talk about Crisis at some point because I've got some stuff to say about that, but gave me that same vibe that track gave me, at least initially. But then it comes in with a down, 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 like that shit. It's a really great track. The second half of the album has some great tracks as well. I want to point out some of the tracks here. Turn the Cross is really great. Damage 3 is a really, really good track. It might be Damaged Ill. I don't know. I think it's Damage 3. Really solid track. Death in Vanas is another one of my favorite tracks. Vanas? I don't know. They've got weird, there's an accent somewhere, and there's like I don't know what you call it, but it's also a really great track. The Infamous Left, also another, just a really, really like punchy track. And Economy of Death is a great way to end the album off. And but yeah, altogether, this is, I think, one of their best albums, if not their best album. Again, I know that's sacrilegious to say because these guys also made The Shape of Punk to Come, but this album is, I think, shows their growth more than Freedom did. Freedom just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like a Refused album. This definitely feels like a Refused album. And the thing about it, too, is that I listened to this a few times, and I went back to listen to The Shape of Punk to Come, and I gotta say, this one vibes with me a lot more. It also vibes not just with its sound, but like it's social commentary. The punk rock kid in me from high school had a mohawk yay high and wore combat boots would really vibe with this album as well. It's talks on social commentary and whatnot, and really like that's something that I come to expect with punk rock. But this one kind of does it in a way that's not preachy, because one of the biggest problems sometimes with punk rock, specifically peace punk stuff, is that it gets really preachy, even though the intent is to just not be preachy, but to get the views out there and let people know. It does come off preachy. Like, one of my favorite bands of all time is Anti-Flag. The problem with Anti-Flag is they're not a punk band for everyone, because they're one of the more preachier bands, and that's not why I like them. Obviously, that is a part of it, but it's gotten to the point where some of their stuff gets really preachy until they got signed with RCA and they did an album that was mainstream. That was really weird. That was a weird period. Anyways, this is not talking about Anti-Flag. We're going to talk about this. Do I think this made is this going to make as much of a cultural impact as Shape of Punk to Come made? Probably not. But I think if you were a fan of that album, you'll probably like this one. It's not exactly the same, but it definitely has those Refused mentalities in here. This album was enough to make me want to go see them in concert, which I am going to be doing in 2020. I actually have tickets, and I got my brother some as a Christmas present. This actually is not my record. He picked it up. He wasn't a huge fan of Shape of Punk to Come, but then he heard this, and then he decided, well, I got to pick this up. So this is his vinyl. But we kind of share it because we both listen to it anyway. So, but yeah, if you're not sure about Refused, this is not a bad place to start either, because it doesn't have as high a bar of entry as some of their older stuff does. So if you're just starting to get into hardcore, this is not a bad place to start. But at the same time, this is kind of like a masterclass in hardcore music, essentially. And when I talk about hardcore, like hardcore punk, hardcore scene, stuff like that, I'm finding a lot of people are gravitating towards this album because, and this is true with some of my friends too, that Refused was a band that inspired a lot of the bands that we listen to today. And one of the main things that draws people is you want to see who influenced your influences. And this is actually a great place to start if you're not 100% sure, because I can see people who are fans of like Cancer Bats, Alexis on Fire, other bands of that type would be able to jive with this just because of the way it is. Now, that's not to say that I think this is exactly like those bands, but it is definitely closer to something a little more modernized. But yeah, and what I will say to finish this off is that if you don't think this is their best album or you didn't jive with this, I totally get that. There are going to be fans of hardcore and punk who won't. But honestly, like if you think about it, this is really a great evolution for the band, something that Freedom should have been, which was their last album. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling now. If you guys want to see my other reviews, including the one I did on Shape of Punk to Come, there'll probably be a link in the cards or in the end slate of this video. If you would like to support me, Patreon's a great way to do it. Patreon.com/Zeromaster. You can also follow me on Facebook.com/Zeromaster fan page. You can follow me on Twitter @Zeromaster. And you can also follow me on Twitch.tv/Zeromaster, where I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8:03 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Go listen to war music. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.